Hey, my name is Jada, and I saw a couple of posts about a week or so ago that were talking about the number system and whether or not it was a viable um, tool to use for music education or performance purposes. And so I kind of wanted to make a video talking about how I use it, um, how it's strengthened my piano playing beyond anything that it ever was when I was reading or reading exclusively as a classically trained musician before playing by ear. How it sped up or made it easier, faster, or more efficient way for me to learn and do music on a regular basis, on a frequent basis, every week. I actually play at two churches, and between the two of them, I have about 10 to 12 songs that I have to learn a week that we're playing like different songs that we're playing every Sunday. And that's not including anything that I happen to be working on my own. But if I had to read all of that or read and memorize or whatever it is, or even buy sheet music for all of that, it gets expensive, it gets time consuming. And worse yet, especially if I'm buying sheet music, if I have to change the key, because that happens a couple of times a week when the person they assigned to sing it, it's not a good key for them. Yes, I can play in every key because I use my numbers. And so um, I can just switch the key right then. I didn't spend hours learning this whole thing in one key, and then suddenly I have to change the key, and I'm stuck because I don't have sheet music for that key, or I have to sit there and peck out every note in the new key because I do have the sheet music and I already learned it. Things like that, and so it greatly made it more efficient, easier for me to be a practical working musician on a weekly basis, whether I'm playing at church or anything. So, what the number system is a system of quickly identifying the target chords of a song. If I jump into something like Amazing Grace, I'm going to do it a couple of different ways here, but I want to identify the target chords. So, I'm going to do it in key of C because it's easy to see. This is not my favorite key, but it is what it is. just just in that little bit of the song that I'm doing so far, um I'm doing a one, and I know this is a one because we said we're in the key of C. And then that was my target chord. It was on the downbeat. That was me leading to the downbeat with the and then May part of Amazing is on the downbeat, and then that was also the downbeat. But this is not a three. I want to point this out. This E is not a three chord. Yes, it's the third scale degree, but it's not the three because it is still, first of all, I'm still holding my pedal. So you still got this one kind of ringing in here anyway. This scale degree is in the chord, in the one chord, if I was playing in a root position instead of second inversion. Um, so this is just a stronger leading tone pull to the four, even though I'm still in the one chord. So my target chords are one, and then this is not a target chord, but I can identify it still as the one because I know my scale degrees and my notes. Here's my four. Now I'm back to the one. So I had a one, a four, and a one as my target chords. Now, because I use the numbers, if I had a bass player or something, or some other keyboard player that was playing with me, organist, whatever, and for whatever reason they have not heard this song ever in life, particularly keyboard players or guitarists, if they've never heard this song and I'm playing, I'm going to go, okay, we're in the key of C, and I want you to play one chord. Okay, they're going to play some form of the C major chord, whether it's, well, here's the root, first inversion, second inversion, something like that. They may even throw the two or the second in there. This is not a ninth because the seventh is not present in this chord at all. So even if I played it like that, I got 1 4 1. Now let me rearrange this differently. That's the strongest probably harmony for that particular phrase of the song. But because I know my numbers, let's just say for whatever reason I decide, um, just since I'm rearranging this hymn for this moment, I can do this. I'm still on the one. Still on the one. So I did one. Still on the one, 2, 5. Sorry, 5 to 1. So in that instance, I still did. I used numbers, and because I would know what numbers I'm using, I can easily tell someone else, okay, you're playing a 1, then you're playing the 2, then playing the 5, then back to 1. That's not nearly a strong voice leading for that particular song because that's not how it was originally composed, but it still works because if you see that D chord still has an F major tucked inside. So one of the reasons is this works. The number system is not something where you're guessing what chord you're playing on the chord. I really want to emphasize this. You're not going to guess what the chord quality is when you're playing this, when you're using the number system. Here's my scale tones in the key of C. Sorry, and so when I'm forming chords off of my scale tones, they're called diatonic chords. Diatonic is meaning that these chords are in the key. They are present in the tones that are in the key of the song. And so we had 7 tones, and how I'm creating my chords, basically, in our most simplest sense, we're playing a note, we're skipping this note, we're playing the next note, we're skipping that note, playing the next note. Now we have a full chord here. This is our C major triad, and you notice they're all included in the scale tones of the key. So here we go. This was my 1 chord, and notice that it is major. It is not. Well, I'll get into other things as soon as I give you all the diatonic chords. C, 1 chord is major. Now I'm gonna move every finger up 1 note. Move every finger up 1 note. Now I'm on the D. The D is the 2 chord. The 2 chord is always minor. Moving up again. 3 chord, minor. Move up again. 4 chord, major. 5, major. 6, minor. 7, diminished. You know, there's several different chord types, and in this, the augmented chord, there's actually only 4 triadic chord types: the major, minor, diminished, and the augmented. Augmented is not a diatonic chord. It is not a part of the diatonic of any key. However, that doesn't mean you can't use augmented chord, of course. When you get into higher harmonic functions, um, and stretch out your chords further past triads, you can definitely use augmented chords to accent and bring out different colors of the music as you see fit, but they still have to follow the basic diatonic functions of the key, especially if you're playing with people you never have met or playing with singers you've never played for. You don't want to go off in some crazy place and leave them behind, and then you're looking at them like, why aren't you keeping up? No, the system is giving you and them an opportunity to communicate, and that's at its basic form. You're communicating with other people in the fastest way possible so that everybody can play together and be on the same page. So let me go back to the C major. Notice I would not choose an E flat because when I played this, E flat is not a part of the diatonic scale. So if somebody said 1, I would never play an E flat, or in this case, a C minor chord, because this is a C minor chord. I'm not going to get into how to what the chord formulas are and all those type of things, but would never play the minor because if somebody told me a 1 and I'm in a major key, the 1 is not minor, and this is also not diatonic to the key. Same with if I'm on a 2. This chord right here is a minor chord. The 2 is always minor. Even if I went to, let's say, E flat. Sorry. major, 2 is minor. It doesn't matter what key I'm in, that's times 12. If it's in a major key and you're on the 2 chord, the 2 is minor. It doesn't matter the inversion, it's still a minor chord. And it's not major. This note is not present in the diatonic key. I keep repeating things because I want to make sure it's perfectly understood that each of these scale tones has a function in the number system. 1 major, 2 minor, 3 minor, 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, 7 diminished. So in saying all of that, we need to make sure that we know that the numbers do give a specific function to the scale tones. With that means we don't have to guess. So, we're playing along. I'm sitting on the C. Somebody calls out 4. Oh, I know it's major. Now, whether I hit this major or if I hit that, it's still a major chord because I've got or still the 4. I've got my F in the bass, incidentally, and I've got my triad. It's in a different inversion. Now, guess what? I haven't talked anything about 7 chords. I'm giving the basics for this particular moment so that we can see the simplest form right this moment, what it is. So another thing the music, the number system does is, for me, when I'm listening to music, not only am I able to quickly identify the target chord, the first thing I'm going to identify is the key. Once I identify the key, whether it's major or minor. Now, based on what we were just talking about, if I know if the key is major or minor, I know what notes I'm assigning to these functions on a major key. I've only talked about assigning functions to the major key. If I were in minor key, let me do that really quick. In a minor key, I'll go to, I want to stay in C, even though it's easier to see the A minor. But to show the differences between that C major that we just talked about, I'm going to do the C minor. So let's look at this. Same way, we're using our scale tones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Now, same way I did with play a note, skip a note. When I'm playing a note and skipping a note, playing a note and skip a note, that applies only to the chord or only to the notes that are in the scale. So in this case, I'm playing the C, I'm skipping the D, I'm playing the E flat. And then I'm skipping the F, and then I'm going to the G. Now, I know we've got this note in here, we've got this note in here. We're not concerned with those because they're not a part of the diatonic key, or they're not part of the scale of C minor. So that's not something we're even concerned with. It's like they don't exist for this moment in time. Play a note, skip a note, play a note only applies to the notes that are in the scale. Talking kind of fast because I want to get through everything. So 1 is minor. Moving up each note, again, notes that are only in the scale. 2 is diminished. 3 is major. 4 is minor. Now this is a special one. 5 is minor. I'm going to come back to it. Diatonically speaking, 5 is minor in a minor key. 6 is major. 7 is major. And we're back to 1. Now, for those paying attention, these are the exact same chords in E flat. They just start on, if you were in E flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would be the 6th key. Or the 6th scale degree, in E flat. And all those chords are still the same, but they have a different position. So if we were playing something in C minor. Oh, hold on. Before I play something in C minor, I was on that 5 chord, and we said the 5 was minor. Now, harmonic theory rules or music theory rules tell us that a 5 is major because it's the dominant chord, and it leads us to the key center, in this case, which is 1. So just like in C major, this was our 1 chord in our 5 chord in C major. And what's happening here is, what we really would like to play it like this. You hear this? It's leading us to the C. So this is the movement you're getting. You don't have this movement. Let me show you the chord. That's the minor chord, G minor chord, if we played it in its diatonic form in a minor key. So you would be playing it like that. Or sorry, wrong. That's what it would sound like in minor. Now, people do these kinds of things. It almost sounds like some medieval type of functionality. Either way. So, our strongest voice leading, though, uses our leading tone. And then even if we're going to minor, we're still wanting to pull with this leading tone. So kind of in our head, we know that the 5 is major and dominant regardless of what key we're in. Now with that bit of information, if I'm in C, C, and then I'm just making up some. Sorry, I keep going to the major. Sorry, let me do all that again. Sorry. Something like that. I'm just making up something on the spot, but to show you that the minor key, you're still using the same number. So I did a 1 for me to give you the notes of what I did. Then I went to the 4, and then I kind of did I think I did a 9 chord, something like that. Let me go down here. Something like that. Anyway, a 9 chord. I don't think I did that particular one, but the F minor 9, I'm using the higher functions. And then I had this diminished, but I had the half diminished 7. And then I've got my dominant chord right there on the G, and then leading my leading tone back to my C minor. Okay, so that's kind of what's happening with the numbers. Now, if I'm listening to a song, I can hear, because I know the numbers, whatever key I'm in, I'm going to find my key, and then I'm going to determine if the song is in a major or if the song is in a minor key, and then I can still use my numbers to identify what I'm hearing on the record. And a lot of times you're going to hear the number, the root. And when we're saying numbers, we're dealing with the root of the chord. Like I was talking about when I did this is not a 3. This, and I see so many musicians doing this all the time. This is still a part of the 1 chord. Now I've just kind of made the 1 go to first inversion. And again, I'm not dealing with a lot of these other theoretical concepts right now. I'm just kind of giving an overview. But this is not a 3. This is still me kind of extending the 1, and then to the 4. Now, if I wanted to make this a 3, let me see. I'm just kind of throwing out ideas while I'm working through the number system. So we can see this from a theoretical standpoint. Playing by ear is not just something that people that are not, or people that aren't educated at a school uh, can't do, or something like that. It is honestly a tool that can help you work through your music, whether you're listening to it, whether you're looking at it on sheet music. Reading is good. Reading is cool. You can open up a hymn book, find the song you need, read it, and then because you can play by ear, change the key because you just learned all the numbers. I do that kind of stuff all the time when people approach me with hymns that I've never heard. I pull my melody right out of the book. I harmonize using the number system, and then I play the hymn in the key that they wanted to sing it in anyway. So there's situations like this. But when I let's see, if we want to make this, let me go to Amazing Grace and still try to use that as a 3. Sorry. Okay, so in that case, I had to do a whole lot more. But what I was essentially doing, I did a 3 to a 6. Something like that. Sorry, let me do that one more time. So I'm trying to make sure that if some people are trying to learn what I just did, Let's see. I did my 1 and extended the 1. Then I went to now I made it a 3. This is the root, and then I'm just kind of using the 3 6 to get me to my 2. Now I ended on the 5, but I could have done the exact same thing I did earlier with something like that. So the same thing here. This is the extension. That's me going back. So that was 1, the extension, and then 3 6 2 5 1. Either way. Now, for me to make this, the reason I know this is a 3, number one, this 3 is leading me to the 6. If I also choose to, if for a split second, and again, this is another use of the number system, but for a split second, if I choose to think of every single target chord as its own key, that would make this temporarily, for one moment in space of this song, the 1 chord happens to be a minor chord, and we're using it, so that would be A minor would be the key we're thinking in for like a split second. Well, just like we said, every chord we would need a 5. 1 2 3 4 5. Guess what the 5 is? It's the E. Not only does the 3 lead to 6 in a diatonic key, this would be 5 1 if we thought of this in the minor key. So I kind of am using this in this kind of way as it's a 3 chord, and this is honestly a very here's my 3rd. This is actually the sharp 9. Even though it looks like it's major, it's not. This is the sharp 9. My minor note for this 3 is right here. And then that's my 6. So either I can look at it either way, theoretically speaking. For this is either my dominant. I'm not using a dominant chord. Let me use a dominant chord. If I were using a dominant chord, it would be, let me take, that's an E major or E dominant. I don't have my minor in there. Now this is a dominant chord. Same thing. So whether I'm thinking of it as 3 to a 6, 2 5, back to 1 in my diatonic key, just using a very rich chord on this. This is a sharp 5 and a sharp 9, sharp 9, sharp 5. This is my 7, and this is my 3rd for my chord. I use a lot of sharp 5, sharp 9s on. You can use them on minor chords and major chords, but especially since both of those tones are present, you kind of can mix and match. But I use them for a lot of my minor chords, and I use them for 5 chords at times as well. It's also ripe for, you've seen it in this. Another way to see or look at this is if I was using just tritone. So, sorry, let me give you the notes. Those would be the notes in the chord, but then I could put my 3 right there on the bottom, and I could do it the same in that context of that phrase for Amazing Grace. See what I'm saying? So I didn't use the root that time, but it was still a 3 chord. And I would know this because I know the notes that are in those chords. I know the function. That would be me using that as a 3. So if I'm playing and then I would tell a bass player, if it's just a bass player, 3, because they need to be on this note. But if I was talking to a key, even though this is not the 3 chord, but if I'm talking to a keyboard player, I gotta say 1, Now I'm going to say 3, 6, 2, 5. See what I'm saying? So in that instance, you've got to know who you're talking to and what the chord function is when you're talking to them, because you need to be really efficient for the bass player. And perhaps that's where the confusion is rising, because in something like this, especially for something like the 3, it is sometimes uh, still an extension of the 1 chord. And so if I'm on 1 and I call this chord 3, or if somebody tells me 3 and it's really still the 1, I'm going to be playing. If they say 3, I'm going to be the minor, the straight minor. Sorry, that's the minor. Then I'm adding the 7th, and then I double the minor tone. So if they say 3, I'm going to be playing this, but they're still here. You would have a severe clash unless you've got some really thick, like neo soul music or something like that. But it would that's not what the function is of this chord. This is functioning as a 1, and it's in first inversion. This is functioning as a 3 in first, or a 3 in root position. Very different. Something that definitely needs to be understood between musicians. So each chord, again, really quick, each chord in the number system has its function. I'm not going to guess about what the function is because it's already been assigned way before I even got to this. It's not even been assigned. It's literally using the notes in the key where they are, and it doesn't change arbitrarily based on songs you're playing like that. You would literally need a different scale if you wanted, let's say, you want your 2 to be major. Matter of fact, let's look at that. Basically, if you want your 2 to be major all of a sudden, that would be, I just played a Lydian scale for those that know those different kind of things. So if I played and I'm playing in some Lydian bass music, that would be me. A quick example of me essentially playing that in a Lydian mode, because I'm using that F sharp, which is diatonic. I've got my screen set to flats, but it's the F sharp, G flat in this case. That's a whole nother lesson why this would be an F sharp, or call this an F sharp, dealing with D major, and not G flat. But anyway, the F sharp, G flat is diatonic to the key, or the Lydian. So C Lydian, the F is not present, but the F sharp is. So in that case, sorry about that. In that case, we can look at that and say, okay, now I can use this note as my 2, but I would be using that as the 2 at all times. And the only way that would happen, even with me using that functionality of the numbers, is that I would have to know ahead of time that we're in C Lydian, not C Ionian, which is C major, which is the majority of what songs are. You're dealing with the other modes and things like that a lot more in jazz, as opposed to gospel. There are a lot of gospel songs that use different modes, and that's another lesson altogether as well. But the point I'm trying to make, and even simpler, the point I'm trying to make is that we use the diatonic notes based on the scale that we're using. So we're in C major. We can't just go assigning other notes in there as we choose. The chords themselves have functions and they need to be used as such, especially if you're using the number system with other people. Now, another thing I want to get to, I'm getting kind of lengthy here and I want to start wrapping this up. I spoke about this. I believe I spoke about this earlier, but uh, there's some pros and cons. I guess a couple of pros and cons that you can look at for the number system. Honestly, it's cheaper in the long run when you don't have to use sheet music, because you need to buy those things, support the music as is. And if that's your means of using, personally me, I every week now between buying sheet music and buying songs. I like to buy songs because I like to listen to songs, but I am also a songwriter and I play for an artist and I like people to buy her music as well. So I personally, when I get new music, I don't just listen to it on YouTube. I do listen to it on YouTube, but I go also and buy that song for that week. So I'm adding to my collection. Like I said, I play about 12 new songs a week or whatever when we're doing our new music as opposed to doing older things. And I go buy that song because I support that artist. Sure, um, you know, it's not nearly. I might be buying 5 or 6 songs, so I might be spending $5 on supporting gospel music every week, $5 6 on the music. But either way, that's a lot cheaper than I looked up a even a digital form of a sheet of some sheet music of what was I looking at just to see uh the best in me, Marvin Sapp's The Best in Me. I found a copy of it for like $4. If I had bought uh new music every week at for sheet music, that would be $20 versus $6. That's $14. That's half tank of gas, that's lunch and dinner, you know, depending on what you do. If you cook, that's meal for a couple of days. Either way, it's a lot cheaper in the long run uh, to learn to play by ear. And everybody doesn't go to school for music like I did. Now, going to school definitely enhanced my understanding of music. Um, and I appreciate that, but everybody else doesn't. I mean, everybody doesn't have that type of finance, so that's why I try to teach uh, people music a lot cheaper. My college degree, because I went out of state, like I said, I'm from Kansas City, but I went to Ball State in Indiana. That was almost $100,000. So you compare uh, $5 a week to $15 a week for the sheet music if you took lessons when you're younger to $100,000. You can see the difference. But if you play by ear, once you learn how to do that, it is far cheaper, and you're still, if you earn money for a living from music, your what is it, cost ratio is much greater when you play by ear than if you're having to read sheet music. And then the time it takes to learn the song is just totally different when you can hear and understand versus see, process, then output. And to that same point, I want to say another benefit, another pro of playing by ear is that you are immediately connected to the music. I like to equate this to like children. Let's say you have a 2-year old, and I'm not by any means saying a younger musician or a uh, younger musician in time they've played or experienced is equated to a child, but I'm just using the number of years versus children learning and growing. And children have a great capacity to learn, but I find it interesting that we teach music backwards. When we teach our 1 and 2 year, and I don't have kids, but I substitute teach largely because I love the idea of learning music concepts, the way kids learn, and using them to teach music. But when we teach children, and I'm not even talking about school age, but like 1 or 2, can you imagine a 1-year old? They need to eat the food out of the jar. This is after they've been weaned, off the bottle and everything else. Can you imagine when you get that jar baby food and you begin to say, okay, you pull out a book and you show them the picture and you're like, and you show them the word, you know baby food, and then, or green peas mash, whatever, and you show them the picture, and then you tell them the nutritional information and all of this, and then you got the spoon in your hand and you go in the dynamics of what a spoon is, when it was created, the history, show them how to spell it, how to hold it, all this stuff. The kid is hungry, they're ready to eat, and they're looking to you to eat. They learn how to eat because you do one thing: you pop open the jar of food and you put the spoon in it and you scoop out the food and you put it in their mouth. They've already learned the concept of eating previously when they were on the bottle. And so once you go from the bottle to this food, you did not do an entire dissertation on spoons and jars of baby food. You simply open it up, and they witnessed this. You might have said, okay, open up. Now they're equating open with the spoon, with the food. They were immersed in the concept of eating, and they learn faster. Matter of fact, they eat for years using these kinds of concepts before they learn a letter, a note, or not a note, a letter, a sentence, a word, all this stuff, how to read a book, all these things, how to even talk. Okay, they're hearing, and so my point here is, if we did music the same way, we do music absolutely backwards in this respect. Is that the first thing people want to teach you in music is not how to hear, but it's how to read. And then for the people that can't read, it's like, well, you're unlearned. Okay, well, there's a level you can kind of get to that. But we would truly say someone is, quote, dumb or mute. They used to use that term back in the 17, 1800s when people couldn't talk or something like that, but they couldn't talk because they couldn't hear. And that's the kind of thing that happens. You see musicians become somewhat mute as far as music is concerned because they learn how to read, and that's it. But they can't carry on a conversation musically because all they can do is open up a book. Again, imagine if you said, "Hey, how are you doing?" and somebody holds up they look at you, and then they're like, they open up a book, and then they have to find, okay, hey, look at you, and then they have to see, well, what's my response to, hey, look, hey, how are you? And so they read, oh, I'm fine. Well, what did you do today? Okay, they're looking in the book again to try to find, okay, what did you do today? And then they find, oh, and then they got to think about what they did, and then they got to find the words for it, and then have it scripted out for them, and then say it. That's a slow form. That's not communication. That is reciting, actually. And you can recite well. There's people that make full livings, so that makes music a little different, but it's still a language. When we're instantly hearing, somebody knows I'm in C, and they might, you know what I'm saying? Now, I'm just kind of making up some stuff right now. But the point here is, when somebody else is playing with me and they hear me do certain things, now we're talking, we're communicating. They're not reading this off a page. They're not trying to figure out, well, what's going to happen? What's he going to do? They're kind of immersed in the conversation. So I think there needs to be a true combination of the two, but it needs to start with the hearing. And quite honestly, when I was in college, a lot of my counterparts, a lot of my classmates, they knew how to read. They could play. I can read, sight read, and stuff like that, but they could sight read circles around me. It was like I was sight read probably fourth or fifth grade level, and they're sight reading at college level or something like that. If we compared it like that, but when I tell you, their ear couldn't use it at all, and we took the same exact sight reading and sight ear classes, but you have them, and they struggle with it. Like, it was my easiest class. They would play chord progressions, and we would have to notate on paper what that was. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a 2-5-1. And because I could hear this, and then I could hear this, and then I hear this, I know how to fill in my whole chord, because they were like, well, we're using different, actually it would be something closer to that, because they would tell us if we were using triads. It was just so easy because I knew how to use my ear. They struggled with it because they did not know how to use their ear, and they were just amazed. I was tutoring people that could play circles around me classically on how to use their ear, and I was taking the class at the same time. Like, I was learning the same time as them, but I knew how to use my ear, and so I did. So there's that. Real quick, let me sum this up. It's faster learning curve. There's more musical opportunity um, beyond classical arenas, because you can quickly, like I said, converse with other musicians. And I'm not talking about vocally, I'm talking about on your instrument. You can change the key quickly as needed. Some singers can't sing it in the key. They need it lowered or raised a couple of steps. These are all the pros. You can play unheard music instantly without hours of practice. This pertains to, now, like I said, it may not be an exact transcription, but you're close. You study music in your own time for the exact transcriptions, and then you get stronger and stronger as time goes on. But some of the cons, and I've only got a couple of those, but the number system is widely misunderstood. and people not understanding what it is. That's because they don't know that the chords have functions, or the scale degrees have chords that have functions, and so they're guessing the notes. The other one that I thought about was sometimes when people learn the numbers and they're kind of proficient at jumping from number to number, regardless of the key, they stop learning. They don't go any further musically because they can already do. They don't practice and things like that. Um, and then the third one that I see is people falsely claiming to use the number system while just randomly assigning qualities to the notes. That's not guessing. That's not the number system. That's just not that. So we can't even call it that. We got to call it something else, but it's not the number system. And I need to point out that neither of these cons, or none of these cons, are the fault of the system itself. That's kind of a user error. People not understanding, people getting proficient at the system and then deciding not to learn, and then falsely claiming to use it. Those are user errors. So, I'll call them cons, but they're really not cons to the system itself. It's cons of the user, the people using the system or not using the system and calling it that. So these are, I kind of went through a lot of stuff, and this was much longer to go through, but I want to play really quick. I don't want to play in C. Well, I'm going to play it in C. I don't want to, but and now I'm trying to get through this and use all the notes in the scale. There's me using F sharp. Um, Something real quick. I just kind of threw that together on the spot, but I'm using numbers, and I'm using also things of thinking in other keys and using those numbers again in the new keys for target chords to come up with an arrangement while I'm playing. And sorry, it's a little bit difficult for me trying to play with this microphone in front of the piano, but you know, make it work a little bit. But I hope this helps somebody. If you are not concerned but confused about some things, you can inbox me or whatever like that. But I just kind of wanted to clear up some things, and I may eventually make this video again, but make it shorter, clean it up a little bit. But there was a lot that I wanted to discuss and talk about. Feel free to comment, share, feel free to discuss. We can have a discussion right on the post itself if need be. But anyway, you take care. Happy practicing. Happy learning music, both whether you're learning to read, and I super encourage you to learn how to play by ear, how to use a number system before you learn how to read, so your ear is activated before you have to uh, use your eyes to see, because that's what we're used to doing all the time. So hear before you see. Um anyway, everybody have a blessed day and take care.